And welcome to a new edition of Phillies Talk Podcast. I'm joined this week by blogger Matthew Veasey, talking all about Pete Mackanin and his new contract going through 2018 with the option for 2019. We're going to talk about the Phillies' bullpen woes and what possibly can be done to fix it. And we're going to look at the bright spots with the Phillies offense and a whole lot more on this edition of Phillies Talk.
Here's the stretch by Robinson. The 3-0 pitch. Swing a long drive. There it is. Number 500. The career 500th home run for Michael Jack Schmidt. And the Phillies have regained the lead in Pittsburgh 8-6. And the Phillies dugout have swarming out to home plate.
Phillies Talk Podcast is now listener supported. Just go to our Patreon page at Patreon, patreon.com/Phillies, and you can sponsor this podcast.
Welcome to Phillies Talk, the independent podcast from FightinPhillies.com, featuring news and views about Phillies baseball.
Hi, this is Gary Matthews. You listen to the Fightin' Phillies podcast.
Thank you very much, Gary Matthews, and you're listening to the Phillies Talk Podcast, one of the longest running, and I believe it's the longest running independent podcast talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. My name is Rich Baxter, and I'm joined tonight by a fellow Phillies blogger and all-around great guy, Mr. Matthew Veasey. How you doing, Matthew?
Great, Rich. Good to be back with you.
Great to be talking Phillies baseball with you. And as we, before we went on the air tonight talking Phillies baseball, we found out that the game down in Washington has been postponed. Game 1 going to be the 10th time that the Phillies face the Washington Nationals this year already.
They're getting pretty familiar. Well, it's a division rival, so that's to be expected. But I guess we're not going to see them for a while at some point. Until September of them.
Yeah, it's going to be a long gap until we see them again. But yeah, as you said, we've certainly become familiar with them, and they've become familiar with the Phillies. But they've played the Washington Nationals pretty tough. I think it's 5-4 in favor of the Nationals already. The season schedule already and the results of that. But I guess things could be worse for the Phillies in that. But big surprise announced yesterday. The Phillies extending the contract of Pete Mackanin through 2018 with a team option for 2019.
It's I guess that's a little bit to be expected. I think there are some people who were, I've seen mixed opinions about this out there on the web and listening to it on Sports Talk, and I understand Klentak's reasoning, and I really, personally, I don't have any problem with it. It's not such a long-term commitment to Pete that, as this team starts adding these young players that they're expecting from the minor leagues, if they decide that they want to go in a different direction, they're not committing a ton of money to them. The contract's only guaranteed through next season. The 2019 season's a team option, so this isn't really a major investment. I'm sure for Pete, it's a lot of, he acknowledged some thanks to the Phillies organization for helping out himself and his wife. I think it helps them as far as stability goes, and a little extra cash never hurts. So I think it's the right move for now. It eliminates that question. That's one less question now for at least for the rest of this year and for next year.
Initially,
I problem with it.
Yeah, initially when I heard the announcement, it was probably more so the timing of the announcement than anything. The Phillies, 2 games winners of their last 12 games, kind of a strange timing to announce the re-signing of a manager. I didn't really have anything personal against Pete Mackanin, but it kind of tells me where Matt Klentak is with this team. I really don't think he knows which way he's going with this team. We've heard a lot of speculation that they may be in the hunt for an expensive free agent in 2018. That remains to be seen. Certainly they're going to have Pete Mackanin unless they change their minds about that at some point, but they've re-signed him through the 2018 season. They have an option for 2019. They certainly took care of a guy that's been in the organization for a long time. That was a good point about his rehiring. I'm not so sure he's the guy going down the road and is going to be the manager of this team when it becomes successful. But for now, it's going to be Pete Mackanin at the helm.
Yeah, I would agree with you there down the road. I think that for me, it's still an open subject whether he's the long-term skipper. But in the short term, even though he's an almost 50-year veteran of this game, he hasn't managed a big league team on his own for much more than a couple of years now, and he's in some ways still learning. I'm sure he would say, I'd admit, he's still learning a little bit, and he hasn't had a chance to really manage with a lot of what we would call quality talent. Certainly not first division talent. So I think it's more of a nod to, hey, listen, we've been talking about these kids coming along for a couple of years now. We've been getting by with these, what I like to call placeholder players, and that's what we've saddled Mackanin with, and let's let him at least start out, as we start bringing these kids in, let him have a shot at us managing them when they first come up and see how he's doing. He'll get a little more experience. They'll get used to him. And if we need to make a change as we get better, bring in some better, maybe more veteran talent, like you said, the 2018 free agent class, 2019 free agency, if it's not working out with him, we can always make a change at skipper. The teams do that all the time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the negative comments have been brought on by Pete's handling of the bullpen this year. It doesn't seem like he really has a plan with the bullpen. We just heard from Joaquin Benoit yesterday or 2 days ago in reference to this. He was used in uncertain roles, and he had a valid point. He brought up that he doesn't know when he's going to come into the game. He could be a middle reliever, he could be a one-inning, eighth-inning type of a guy, or he could be closing. And he just sort of said that, hey, it would be nice to know what our role is with this team.
You know what? But Rich, I'm just not buying that. I understand. I think I understand Benoit's position from this perspective that he's an older guy, so he's much more old school. I mean, Benoit was pitching back in the major leagues. He made his debut in 2004. I mean, that's a long time ago now. It's a decade and a half almost that he's been in pro ball. So he was brought up in that old school mentality, and things are changing these days. I mean, he's a 39-year-old reliever who's making $7.5 million. He's made over $54 million in his career as a relief pitcher. I mean, this is a guy who I believe, I don't know if it was Kruk that I heard talking about it the other night, but I share the opinion of people are paying you $7.5 million to play a game, and they might be asking you to go out there one inning a night. Just go. Just take the ball when your manager and your team needs you and get outs. That's what you're paid to do, get outs. Whether you can come out in the 7th, 6th, 9th, 8th, especially as a veteran, your attitude should be, give me the ball, Skip, whenever you need me. Maybe that's an old school attitude too, but that's my attitude. I wasn't very sympathetic to Benoit at all, although I understand because he kind of came out of that, was raised in that baseball system of slotted roles for relief pitchers in certain innings. But the game is getting away from that, and I don't blame Mackanin for trying to find something that works when nothing is working so far. And to me, a guy like Benoit should just take the ball when Mackanin offers it and get the outs. He paid $7 million to get outs.
Yeah, that sounds legitimate. A lot of the teams have certain guys that, they know their roles. They know they're a middle reliever. On certain games, they may be asked to step in at different points in the game. But I can hear what you're saying about making a paycheck and, going out there and doing a job. I think that with a reliever in general, they have to have a certain mindset going into the evening, where they're going to come into this game, get into the groove sort of thing. Am I going to close the game? If I'm going to be the closer, let me know I'm going to be the closer. I mean, 9.5 out of 10 baseball teams, maybe even 9.99, have a named closer. The Phillies sort of settled with a closer last year. I thought he did a pretty good job, but this year, for whatever reason, and maybe even towards the end of last year, it sort of fell apart for him. But it's fallen apart for every Phillies reliever that has taken the ball in that role as the closer. In fact, looking at the stats last night, I had a lot of time to research, so I started reading. I was not surprised to see that the Phillies led the National League with 8 blown saves already this year.
Yeah, to me, the biggest issue for them has been even a guy like Neris. I mean, his ERA's up, but ERA only shows you so many things. Neris' big problem has been the long ball. I think that's cyclical. I mean, his stuff is still there. It's borderline, but he's still giving up fewer hits than he's pitched innings. And his K to walk rate is still really high. I mean, he's still striking out guys. Walks aren't a problem for him. So the base runners aren't the issue for Neris. It's been giving up the long ball. And I think that's a mental issue. I still think Neris is their best back-end closer, if you will, role guy. Nobody else has really succeeded in that role. I think, Nishek and Benoit and Eduardo Ramos, should be the right-handed setup guys. And then you got Joely Rodriguez, handling the left-handed. I mean, ideally, would you like to have a couple of better arms, maybe a couple bigger arms, younger arms than Benoit and Nishek? Sure. But we don't have those right now. So Mackanin's got to work with what he's got. And I think his best bet for me, you're going to take some lumps this year. And they may talk about being better and wanting to be better, but to me, you have to get Neris into that mindset of being a closer. And I think that the only way to not mess with his psyche even further is to just tell him, say, look, Hector, you're our closer, and when the 9th comes around, it's going to be yours, and I'm going to stick with you. And maybe you don't do that forever, but the guy has a track record of success. I'm not talking about a couple of games this year. I'm talking about even going back through last year. He's proven to me that he's their best. The possibility is the best with Neris. So I think if he has the best tools, it's about getting his mindset ready. And maybe that's about, hey, every closer blows one. Every closer blows a couple here and there. So let him go out and blow a couple and still have the role and start to develop that mindset, that mental toughness maybe a little more.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see going forward how the Phillies handle that. It seems like every time there's a closing opportunity, things have been going wrong for them. Maybe that'll straighten out. And it would be a really heck of a season if maybe half or 3/4 of those games that were blown weren't actually blown saves. Maybe the Phillies would have gone on to win them, and we'd be in a much better predicament as of the middle of May here. Not that we're in the worst yet. We're still holding water in the middle of the May here. Still an opportunity for the Phillies. I was talking to a guy last week that wrote for the Washington Nationals blog, and he was really impressed with the Phillies when the Nats came to Philadelphia. There was a respect there that, all of a sudden these people are realizing that the Phillies are maybe a game or two away from getting better this season and showing that they can again become successful. So, with that, the Phillies went out and promptly lost 8 out of 10.
10 out of 12 now.
10 out of 12. But, it looked very rosy early on this year so far, and we still haven't thrown in the towel. But, another thing about this was Matt Klentak made a statement, and it was reported by CSN Philly, that, that a lot of people in the organization has seen this team turn around. Now, I don't know if you can really say that. This team finished 27 games back in 2015. Again, I had plenty of time to research this. My Twitter feed was going crazy last night on overdrive. They finished in 5th place in the NL East. Last year, they were 71 and 91. They finished 24 games back from first place. Pythagorean theory had them at 62 and 100. So evidently they got a little lucky last year because that measurement actually tells you what your results should have been on the season, what runs scored and things like that. But the Phillies ended up 71 and 91 last year. So I don't know. I guess you could call that a little improvement, but I didn't see the improvement in mass that he was talking about.
And you know what? I would have to agree with you there. Right? I think this team is very much they're at a stage right now, I think, where if you're like a real hardcore fan like we are, and like there's a lot of them out there, it's a pull your hair out kind of time. You see some progress some nights, and then just when you're starting to get a little bit excited, there's a lot of bonehead plays, and the bullpen blows some games, and the pitchers don't go deep. And the next thing you know, you're in this spiral where you're like, you know, which one is it? Is it this, is it this team that at one point had won 6 games in a row? I think it was like 8 out of 10 they won, and then right after that lose 10 out of 12. So are they the team that won 8 out of 10 right before that, or are they the team that now has lost 10 out of 12? Your answer is probably somewhere in the middle, and so they are where they are. I'm very much a believer in you are who you are. You are what your record says you are, and they're 13 and 19 right now on merit. It hasn't just been the bullpen. There have been bullpen problems. The offense is improved, but it's still inconsistent, and the starting pitching has been very inconsistent for the most part. So they're still building this thing. It's very obviously, and they would admit it, not a finished product. The thing that I hate is I've heard writers, I've read writers who follow the team regularly make this type of statement. I just saw it again recently, talking about, I believe it was today, that there was a piece out by Matt Gelb, who does a great job. But he said something along the lines of this to me today that's been the kind of pull my hair out thing. He's talking about the run differential. And he was talking about how they had a winning record at this time last year, which they did, if you remember. They were winning right into the middle of May last year. But he mentioned that they were outscored by something like 25, 30 runs. Had a lot of luck in one-run games. And this year, they're at a minus 4, I believe it is. And his comment was, and I'm just not picking on Gelb, I'm just saying he's the latest one that I saw. I've seen other writers suggest this, that run differential suggests they're trending in the right direction, even though their record is 5 games worse. And I'm not buying that run differential thing. They've had a decent run differential ever since that game early in the year where they crushed Washington 17-3. That's a 14-run differential right there. And they've been riding that for a while. And then just when it was getting away, they crushed the Cubs 10-2. So they have 2 games this year where just those 2 games gave them a plus 22 run differential. So, without those 2 games, they're worse off than they were last year. I know you can say, well, they did have those 2 games. You can't throw them away. That's true. But you also can't say that just because their run differential is better this year, that they're a better team or they're improved. I think their run differential is made up of these 2 outlier games. And for the most part, they're not improved over last year.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where the statement from Klentak really lived. Phillies have been scoring runs. The problem is the other teams have been scoring more runs. So whether they lose by a score of 1-0 or 10-9 or 5-0, it's still ending up to be a loss. And as you said, you can score 11 runs every night, but if the other team scores 12, you're still losing the game. You know, optimisms abound, but there's certain your record is your record, as you said just a moment ago. And last year, the Phillies started off April at 14-10. They tailed off in May, 12-16 were their record back then, thanks to BaseballReference.com. So that puts them at the end of May, they're 26-26. So they were about 500 by the end of May last year. But yeah, they started off like a house on fire last year, and we really all of a sudden had to check ourselves. We had to look around. Is this the Phillies 14-10 after April? You know.
Sure. I mean, I was buying in, you know, and I don't think any of us were under any delusions, even in the middle of May last year, that this was a playoff team. But, you know, what you do in that position when you know you're with a building team, a lot of young guys, you expect more young guys to be coming. You know, you're really looking 2-3 years further out, but your team's winning. I think what you do at that point is, if you're a realistic fan, how many of those are there? But if you're a realistic fan, you're just riding it. You know, you're just enjoying it while it's going on. And you know that it's probably going to not last. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, it was enjoyable while it was going on. But anybody that was thinking playoffs with that team last year was getting way ahead of themselves as far as realistic goes. And we saw what happened in the end. You know, they really were what they were in the end. I hate to keep going back to that old phrase, but this year, what's worrying me is they're sitting 13-19 and they've lost 10 out of 12. But you know, where's it going to end? I mean, they're about to go out on a 9-game road trip, and it doesn't get easier. I mean, they're in Washington, they're in Texas. Texas has been struggling, but you know, they still have a lot of talent down there. And then they're going to Pittsburgh, which is always a tough stop. So I mean, people keep saying schedule. They've played a tough schedule to this point. Well, they just lost 2 games to the Seattle Mariners. I mean, that's. You know, they're not a world beater team. So at some point you can talk about the schedule and tough matchups all you want, but you got to start winning games. And that's going to continue to be tough for them, I think.
Yeah, getting back to last season, and I'm still on the baseballreference.com site, they were blown out 5+ runs or more in 34 games last year. So they lost 34 games by 5 or more runs. So that's quite a bit to lose on a season. They only won 10 games by 5 or more runs last year. And speaking of runs, yes, they're scoring runs. Problem is the other team's scoring more runs. But, you know, when they need to score runs, they're not scoring runs. And that is being clutch. A lot of the times you'll see the bases loaded, runners in scoring position. They could have a ton more runs scored this year, I think. But you know, a lot of these guys are just not coming through when they're needed to be. Obadell Herrera comes to mind a little bit. You know, he can hit a home run when nobody's on base. But if you got a guy on second and third, he's going to ground out 9 times out of 10. It just amazes me that these guys can't be more clutch than they are.
Well, they're playing to their talent level. I mean, this isn't a really, like I used it earlier in this particular broadcast, and it's a phrase that I've written and I've used in social media with this team. There's a lot of placeholder players on this team, and you start getting ahead of yourself when you start talking about guys like Cameron Rupp and Freddie Galvis and the corner outfielders now, Michael Saunders. Guys like that, when you start talking about these guys as anything more than stopgaps or placeholders, you're selling yourself a bill of goods. These guys have a certain level they can play to. They only have a certain amount that you can expect. Even a Tommy Joseph. I mean, we saw him last year. He's got some power in streaks, but he's didn't hit for a very good average last year, and he's there again, not hitting for a very good average. Except for Hernandez and Aaron Altair, those 2 guys have stood out to me, head and shoulders obvious. I mean, they've been playing at arguably almost an all-star caliber, both of those guys. Nobody else in the lineup has been consistent. And like you said, that includes Odubel, who they made a little bit of a commitment to, and they expect him to take charge a little bit. And he's, at least so far, he isn't playing to the caliber, I think.
Well, we're going to take a short break here. 120 seconds. We'll be back talking more Phillies baseball. We're going to talk about those bright spots of the offense a little bit more as soon as we get back from this break.
Sponsor an ad on the Phillies Talk Podcast. Support our show and let people know about your business. Email us today. Follow us on Twitter at Fightin' Phillies or on our website, fightinphillies.com.
Hi, this is Farley.
And Mark from Baseball PhD.
Thanks for listening to BaseballPodcast.net.
Up next, another great episode of Phillies Talk.
Hi, this is Gary Matthews. You're listening to Fightin' Phillies Talk Podcast.
Brewtown Sports is your source for Brewers news and notes. Join Mr. Brewtown as he keeps you up to date on all the happenings of your Milwaukee Brewers and Major League Baseball. Follow the show on Facebook and Twitter, Brewtown Sports. Listen 24/7 at brewtownsports.podomatic.com.
Hi, this is Gary Mack of Mets Musing, and you're listening to my good friend Rich Baxter on Phillies Talk, right here on BaseballTalkRadio.com, the home of great baseball talk shows.
And we're back live talking about the Philadelphia Phillies, and I'm with Matthew Veasey. He's a blogger about the Phillies. And Matthew, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you on the web?
Yeah, Rich, we've done this before, and I think maybe I've been a little confusing, but probably the two easiest places that people can find me on the web. The one is my website, which is mattveasey.com, MattVeasey.com. That's my own personal website, and I put all my baseball writing on there. And then the second place would be Twitter. I mean, I'm active baseball-wise at Matthew Veasey, MattHewVeasey. So a lot of all baseball stuff there. So if you got a baseball fan, that's really all you're going to find there. And I do all of MLB. I'm a writer with Fansided with their Call to the Pen MLB blog. But you can find all my stuff at my own website as well. And the Twitter feed, I always reference anything that I put out for Fansided or on my personal feed. So, and besides my actual original writing, do a lot of commentary on baseball, on the Phillies, sometimes in game. So those are the two best places: Twitter at Matthew Veasey or mattveasey.com.
Very cool. And of course, you can find Fightin' Phillies on Twitter. I'm at Fightin' Phillies. Don't mind me if I get on a tirade every now and again. I get a little passionate about the Phillies at times, but I promise I won't bite. You can also find the fightinphillies.com website over at fightinphillies.com. You can also link to the Facebook page there as well. So I'd like to have you stop by. And you can even sponsor this show as a listener. You can go over to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Phillies. And you can sponsor this podcast. I appreciate it. Bring you a little more content. And in fact, this month we're going with several shows for the month. So if you're listening for a long time, you might want to stop by over there at Patreon and chip in a little bit. Every little bit helps towards the upkeep of the podcast. Well, Matt, we were talking a little bit about the Phillies offense and how much better it's become this season. They've scored a lot more runs, and you hit the nail right on the head. One of the best players this season so far in a short amount of time has been Alan Altair. And I have to ask you, how come the Phillies did not play Altair right out of spring training?
That's a good question. I think coming into the season, Altair, he had opportunities to play, and he was inconsistent prior to this. So last year he had some inconsistency problems. There have been some minor injury issues. So I don't think that they really knew what Altair was capable of. I think they knew what his upside talent was, but he hadn't done it yet. So I think they wanted to try to take a step forward as an offense this year, and so they went out and they signed Howie Kendrick and Michael Saunders to play the bulk of the innings on the outfield corners. I think there was a knowledge all along that Altair was going to be the fourth outfielder and that he was going to see a lot of time, maybe even split right field in a platoon with Saunders if he earned that. His playing time, quite obviously, has increased opportunity because of the Kendrick injury. And he, to his credit, has taken the ball and run with it. This is a guy that's playing at an all-star caliber. He's getting everything out of his talent that that I think everybody saw as a possibility all along. Is he going to continue? I mean, right now he's got something like a 1.179. Looking at it right now, that's exactly it. OPS. That's all-star caliber play. He's hitting .351, 21 RBIs in just 85 plate appearances. So 7 home runs in just 85 plate appearances. I mean, contrast that with most of the rest of the starters on this team. They've got 130, 140 plate appearances. So Altair he's playing at an all-star caliber right now. Can he keep that up? I mean, that's a big question. But so far, the reason they didn't give it to him over the winter and in spring training, that was obvious. That was easy to see because he really hadn't earned that to this point. But he has come out of the gates firing. He's gotten an opportunity, and he's earning. When Kendrick comes back, they're going to have some decisions to make.
Yes, they will. And last year, I thought Altair looked good till he got injured. I like Darnell Sweeney as well. You can kind of judge somebody when they bat and when they play baseball. You kind of know that, hey, they look like a good baseball player there. They've got the tools of speed, power. Altair has shown tremendous power, and that's what the Phillies have lacked. They've lacked that guy that's going to step up to the plate and be a home run threat and just a masher, basically. They've had it a little bit with Franco, but to be honest with you, I think he's been a little inconsistent. Sometimes he mashes the ball, and other times he gets extremely cold. He's batting .207 as of the time we're doing the podcast. He does have 5 home runs and 25 RBIs, so he does deliver, but it's not on a steady level, like you said. It's not an all-star caliber of delivery from him. It'll be interesting to see who the Phillies nominate to the all-star game this year. I'm sure none of the Phillies will be elected by the fan voting base, but evidently Pete Mackanin is going to have to make that decision. And as you said, I see nobody else at this time but Altair.
Yeah, it's like you said, none of the Phillies are going to be elected to the team. I mean, we don't have that star caliber player yet. So you're talking about one likely. Maybe if they make it the decision difficult, maybe you'll get 2 Phillies on the All-Star team this year, and that's going to be decided by the manager of the All-Star team and the league president and the coaching staff of the All-Star team. They make that decision. Mackanin won't have any say in that. So you're going to be talking about right now. If it were today, it has to be Altair, right? Doesn't it? Maybe if it's positional need, maybe Cesar Hernandez is considered as well. But those are the only 2 guys. You can make. I think you can make an argument for Hellickson, but those 3 are beyond that. There is nobody. I mean, it's been 1 Altair, maybe 2 Hernandez, 3 Hellickson, and those are the only 3 all-star caliber players that they've had to this point. Zach Eflin has pitched really well. He only has 5 starts, but if he hasn't won any games yet, that's not really his fault. But it'll be tough to pick Eflin, even though his record isn't bad and his results aren't bad. So it's right now they're not loaded with all-stars. This isn't the type of team we have.
That's for sure. Well, it'll be interesting to see going forward who will get this. Of course, the ballots just came out within the last week to 10 days, the voting for the All-Star Game ballots, and I don't know if you take part in this anymore. I used to like to do that at the ballpark, but I don't do it as much as I did when I went to the games as at home. It's just not as exciting to me. I'm not punching out any little cards anymore. Do they even take punch cards anymore?
I don't think so. I think all the voting is online now, Rich. Remember when we were kids, you used to get the ballot down there at the ballpark, and you'd sit there while the game was going on, punching it out, and you'd have to, they actually had the ushers or the usherettes would come up and down the aisles, collecting them up at the vet. I mean, that was like part of the experience. Now everything's online now. It's not just baseball. So I do vote every year. I mean, I go on. Usually what I tend to do is I'll when it first opens up, I'll go in there and throw some votes out to guys I like. And then when it's coming to the close, when they're saying voting is closing, a lot of times then I'll jump on and, try to help out my favorite players. But you're right, it isn't the same kind of feel as when, nothing's the same as when we were kids, Yeah,
and then, you used to only get one ballot. They were very sure about giving you the one ballot. But now at home, it seems like you could stuff the ballot box. If you had nothing better to do, you could create 25 per email address. So the voting is a little bit skewed, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you do get something like 20 votes or something under each email address. I'm trying to pull it up right now as we talk, but it says you can vote up to 5 times every 24 hours, up to a total of 35 ballots. So your email address, you could vote a total of 35 times. Like you said, if you have multiple email addresses, you can vote, over 100 times. So, if anybody has time to be sitting there voting 100 times online, and somebody does. So
that's for sure. Well, we heard some sad news in the last week. The Phillies' ex-slugger, Ryan Howard, was given a chance by the Atlanta Braves. He was on the Gwinnett Braves down there in Georgia. But sad news was he was let go. Do you think this is the end of the line for Ryan Howard? Have we heard the last of Ryan?
Yeah, I'm not going to say sadly. I won't say it's sad. A little melancholy. Ryan is 37 years old now, and that's, I wish I was 37. I mean, 37 years old is certainly not old in any way, but it's old for a baseball player. I mean, especially these days, this is a game for the guys in their 20s. And Ryan's 37. He is probably, I guess, something like a half a dozen years removed now from his last really big season. So, what he did here for us, especially 6-year stretch in the last decade, Rookie of the Year, MVP, perennial MVP candidate, home run leader, the most feared slugger in the game for a 5 or 6 year stretch, World Series, and National League Championship Series MVP, World Series leader. Ryan Howard's a Phillies Wall of Famer, and he should never be booed in this town. And I think we'll always get a standing O here. I saw somebody put out information the other day that said, put out a statement the other day that said Ryan Howard has made like hundreds of millions of dollars in this game, and he'll never have to buy a beer in this town again. That's the way it should be for a guy like Ryan Howard. That's how we should remember him. But he's had his day. Ryan's day is over. I think the same can be said for Jimmy. Jimmy got released this year by the Giants. Shane hasn't been able to catch on with anybody. All these guys are getting into that upper 30s. Chase is still hanging around. His statistics aren't that great. He's a shell of the player that he used to be. Every once in a while, if you watch Chase with the Dodgers, he has a moment, where you're like, he's still the man. But he really isn't. He's not the man that he was, 5 years ago. And it's hard to feel sorry for Ryan Howard. I mean, this is a guy that made almost $200 million in his career. He's got that beautiful house that he built down there up at Tampa. It may be time, though, for him to, think about what's the next thing I'm going to do in life, because it certainly wasn't working out down there in Gwinnett. and didn't work out with the Braves. And that's not a team that's, look at their talent level. I mean, you would think that they could. I mean, they have Freddie Freeman. I mean, he was never going to displace Freeman, but maybe they were hoping that he would do something where they could flip him, as far as the trade goes. But I think that time's pretty much up for him. He was hitting under 200 down there. He only had, I think, something like one home run, or basically what he was doing here last year. Because last year he hit below the Mendoza line for the Phillies. So I think that time is up. Time's up for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, he's got a secret, though, that maybe the Braves didn't know. Even when he was with the Phillies most of the time, April and May was a bad month for him. He excelled in June, July, and August. The heat, the humidity, he seemed to thrive on that, and that's when he was at his best. I really don't think he's completely done as a player. I think he's going to land somewhere else. I think that possibly the American League is the best place for him, but as you said, he's under the Mendoza line. Maybe when it warms up, we'll hear of a team that needs a guy like Ryan Howard. I still think he has some gas left in his tank. He's 37, but he's still got that deep threat. So I don't know if he would be like a big Poppy with that constant deep threat, but he could possibly add some important addition to an American League club that's just looking for that guy that's going to get that home run every now and again. It'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of the year with Ryan Howard. I'd hate to see him go out this way. Realize that most players do have to hang it up. We saw Schmitty announce on the road many moons ago that he was done all of a sudden, just out of the blue. He had had enough. But probably most of the listeners of this podcast do not remember that. They're probably much younger. But, there comes a time when a baseball career is over, as Matt just said. It's pretty sad with a special player like Ryan Howard. Well, it's been a great podcast tonight. Matt, any closing thoughts as we see the Phillies play the Nats and then, as you said, go down to Texas, face Yu Darvish in the first game against them? It doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I probably would want to say, wrapping things up, is I think that maybe it may come across like that we've approached this a lot critically, a lot of criticism of the team, maybe not buying in necessarily to all the progress that Matt Klentak and Pete Mackanin and some of the team officials are saying, or even the writers are saying there's been. But the one thing that Klentak did say that I think I have seen is that the effort level of this team has been high. I think Mackanin has them, for the most part, playing hard. I don't think it's an effort question, and I don't think it's an idea that they don't care, that they've packed it in, they're coasting. Most of the players, I don't think that's the issue. Their results, while they're losing, and while I don't think the run differential is the right stat to point to, something you said earlier really clicked with me, and I wanted to get back to it, was that you said how many games they had lost last year by 5 runs or more. And that's a reflection on them not being competitive. And last year, from June through the end of the year, and we're talking about 4 months, they weren't competitive. But this year has been different. They have been competitive. Even when they've lost close a lot of their games. Sometimes the starting pitching fell short. Sometimes the bullpen blew it. Sometimes the offense left too many runners in scoring position. It seems like it's something different every night. But overall, they're more consistently in the games. So I don't think they've been blown out. Like you said, the 5 run or more thing, that might have happened 2, maybe 3 times tops in these first 30-some games. So they are more competitive. The effort is there. My concern is just that the talent level just isn't there to take them beyond where they are right now. And that's not going to happen until I think they start incorporating some of these kids in. I'm not saying these kids are all the answer, Crawford and Alfaro and Quinn and those guys, but they're Williams. But we're counting on some of these kids to start to elevate the talent level. And I do like the talent level. They're in first place down there on Lehigh Valley. So up there in Lehigh Valley from Philly. So I think I'm still looking forward to seeing these kids come this summer. Maybe that injects some life into the lineup, but more importantly, some real talent into the lineup. I think that's the only thing that's going to really turn this record towards the positive, is getting more talent in here. And you did mention the free agent class, 2018. That is very real. This is a team that doesn't have more than maybe $5 million. I think Odubel's the only contract that they are on the books for in 2018. So this team's going to have a ton of plenty of room to add multiple, big name free agents if they want at that point. So I see the opportunity but we're still not quite there. We still need to wait out these young kids coming. We still need to wait for that free agent class to come, and that's probably not going to happen until the kids are going to get up maybe this summer. Next year, I think you'll see a lot more of that influx of these young kids into the actual lineup on an everyday basis from the start. And at the end of next year is when you'll start seeing the Phillies talking about free agents going after them. So 2017 could still be a bit of a struggling year. I only predicted them to win something like 72, 73 games this year. But 2018, with the kids here, I'm going to start getting a little more excited. And as that year winds down, we're going to be talking about those free agents more. It's right there on the horizon, Rich, but we're just not quite there yet. So let's just let's just hope that this team keeps fighting and they find a way to get our excitement again for a stretch, and hopefully you don't get buried by this 9-game trip.
Yeah, and exactly what you said is what the Phillies have been doing the last several years is, let's bring the phenoms up, the quote-unquote phenoms that we've been hearing about. And that's a little scary to me, too, because you have that mentality year after year. Oh, yeah, I can't wait to see J.P. Crawford. Well, right now, his job really isn't in jeopardy. He's not close to getting that job with Galvis in that spot. I wouldn't be shocked if the Phillies might want to trade Michael Franco for a quality pitcher, and I'm thinking someone on the Mets. The Dark Knight maybe is a nickname. But I could see them getting better that way faster than bringing up some of these young guys that may have a spot or a chance with the Phillies. We've heard it many a time before how great they're going to be. They get here and it's not that great. In fact, it's not good at all. But I liked your optimism towards.
With Franco, he has to make himself attractive. He's got the tools, but he's not producing. So would somebody give you a pitcher of that quality right now for Franco? And then you start to create the issue of a hole in the Phillies lineup because of all the talent that they have in the minor leagues. Third base is not one of the positions where they have somebody coming. So Franco is going to be a tough player to deal, I think, because of his own production, and I think also because the organization right now just doesn't have that guy. They got a nice guy called Staub that they drafted last year, but he's at least a couple of years away. So if you deal Franco, now you're creating a hole in the lineup. Now, are you talking about signing Manny Machado?
Exactly. Now I'm talking. Exactly. You take your fishing pole out, you send it out there, and hey, who wants to come to Philadelphia? We got the Dark Knight. We may have Helix in. You create a little buzz, sort of like the Phillies did a few years ago. Everybody wanted to come here, which hadn't been the case since. So we'll have to see what happens. But a lot of possibilities for the Phillies. We haven't given up on them yet, and we hope you like listening to this podcast. Matt, it's been a great talk with you, and hope to talk a lot more during the season.
Rich, same here. Anytime.